Every website has two parts, the front end and the back end. The front end is the part you see in our browser when we make use of it. The back end is the part that makes the front end functional. It is mainly about storing of data in databases and sending it to the front end. Web development falls into three main categories: the front end, the back end, and the full stack development. The full stack development is the combination of the front end and the back end development. Front end developers use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, while back end developers use other tools. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. We use HTML to define our web page foundation. An example is the text you see on your browser when you put the URL of any website. CSS is used for styling our web page to make it look attractive. For an example, if I want to add color to a particular text, I will make use of CSS. JavaScript is a programming language that we use to give functionality to our web pages. HTML and CSS are not programming languages because they can't tell computer what to do. Before we start writing any code, we will need a code editor. For our project, we will use VS Code or Visual Studio Code. Although there are other code editors like Sublime Text and many others. We would also need some extensions like Prettier. In our next video, I will show you how to format your code using Prettier. You can also install another extension called Live Server, but I'll be using Microsoft Edge to go live because I haven't installed any Live Server yet. So first, open a new folder on your desktop. Next, you can give it a name. Go back to VS Code and open the Explorer panel. Then go to Open Folder. Open the folder that we created on our desktop. Inside the folder, create a file. Name the file index.html. Now, to tell the browser that this is an HTML document, put the left angled bracket. You will see an option like doc type. Click on doc type or enter to pick it. VS Code automatically generates this piece of code for us to use. Next, right after doctype.html, we will put our HTML elements. You would notice something different. It looks like there are two HTML elements, but that's not true. At our left is an opening tag, and at our right is our closing tag. Inside this HTML element is where we would put other elements. So we can click enter to continue. So next is our head element. Then inside our head element we have our title element. And let's say Enoch's web page. We use the head element to give the browser information about our web page. The title element is used to specify the title of our web page. Let me show you what I mean. So let's upload with Five Server then it will take us to our browser. My default browser is Microsoft Edge. So here we can see our title, Enoch's webpage. Now, if you look at the URL or address of this page, you'll know that it is a local address, so everybody knows this IP address. So back to VS Code. Inside our body elements, let's say we want to showcase a tweet. We all know that a tweet has an image and some text. So we start with img for the image element, then tab or enter to continue. Next, we would have to upload an image, but there are things you will notice about this element. You will notice that there are no closing tags, only an opening tag. This is because the image element is a self-closing tag. And it cannot have any child elements. We also have two attributes, source and auth. The attributes are used to provide additional information about the image. The source attribute is used to supply the path to our image. The auth attribute is used to give the browser some text to display in case the image cannot be displayed. In our next video, we will talk in details about the auth attribute. We will also talk about validating our web pages using a web validator. So to upload our image, go to our Explorer panel, click on New Folder, and name the folder. Okay, I'm going to name mine image. Next, we go back to our File Explorer and copy any image of our choice. Next, so we go back to the image folder and paste the image inside. So after pasting the image inside the image folder, we go back to our image elements. Inside the source, we put the name of the image that is inside the images folder. So we put image dex.jpg. VS Code is suggesting this name because there is a file with that name in one of the folders, and that is our images folder. Right after the image, we would have our text elements. So we'll start with P, then tab or enter for our paragraph element. Next, we put some text. Okay, let's say our Twitter handle. So let's say at enoch.jpg. Next, we also add another paragraph element and a text inside. I love to code with you. Now we right click anywhere and we click upload to file server since we haven't downloaded any live server. So now we have our image and 2 text elements, but this tweet is not looking presentable because the image is too big and the texts are not visible. Now this is when CSS comes in. Now inside our head element, after the title, we'll add another element called the style. This is where our CSS code will be written. First, we are going to style our image. So we type img to reference our image. We type img to reference our image elements. Next, a pair of curly braces. Then inside the braces, we will write our CSS declarations. These declarations will have a property and a value. So we set our width property to, let's say, 80 pixels. So the property, then a colon followed by the value, then a semicolon. The semicolon is to terminate the line so we can write multiple CSS declarations. Ctrl S to save changes. So next we go back to our browser. So now the image has gotten much smaller, but the edges are too sharp. If we want to make the edges round, how do we do that? Back to our VS Code, we would set our border-radius property to, let's say 10 pixels. So we save the changes and back to our web browser. So now the edges are round and the image looks softer. Now what if we want our image to be a complete round figure? How do we do that? So back to our code. If we set the border radius value to half the width of the image, we would get a round image. So now let's do that. So we set it to 40 pixels. Then we save the changes. Now back to our web page. We now have a round image, but our text elements are under the image. I want the image to move to the left side of the text so I can look more presentable. So back to VS Code, we are going to add another property called the float property. So we're going to add the float property to left. So our image element will float to the left side of our text. So now we have done that, but our image is too close to our text. We will need to create a space between them. So let's go back to our code. So we'll use another property called margin-right, and we'll set it to 10 pixels. Okay, so now everything looks okay now. So now let's work on our text elements. So now outside the braces of the image declarations, we write P to reference our paragraph elements, and another pair of curly braces, so we can set our font dash weight property to bold. Then save the changes. So back to our browser, you would see that both of our text elements are bold. But if you want to apply this to one of our text elements, how can we achieve that? So back to our code, we would have to separate these two paragraph elements. I'm going to give the first paragraph element an attribute called class. So class double quotes. Class is a short form of classification. So you are putting the elements inside a different category, just as we have different products in a supermarket. So we put this paragraph element inside a class called, let's say, BC. So class BC. Then we change our CSS rule to only work on the paragraph elements with class name BC. So after P, we type .bc. We can remove P and the rule will still be enforced on all elements that have the BC class, whether paragraph elements or not. So we save the changes, then back to our browser. Now everything looks better. So that's all for our first video. Hope you enjoyed the lesson. As we progress to other videos, we would show you how to use developer tool or dev tool to inspect your web page. We will show you how to validate your code, all the basic tools you need to know in HTML, and how to format your code using Predia. Hope you had a good experience with us. Bye.
See you next time.